My stepbrother was sitting in his room playing video games, laughing at my despair, while I was out on the streets crying and searching for my lost dog. But he didn't know one thing. That little dog he sold for $500 had actually signed his ticket to prison. When I met the buyer and she told me Ryan's disgusting lie, I didn't just get Luna back. That day, I legally ended Ryan's life with a single signature. And believe me, seeing his face turn ghost white in the finale was worth everything. Justice sometimes comes late, but when it comes, it hits hard. Before you hear how my stepbrother paid the ultimate price for what he did to me that day, please subscribe to the channel and share your pet's name in the comments. If you're ready, let the revenge begin. My name is Defane. Let me tell you, that day was the darkest morning of my life. Luna, my little Pomeranian. She wasn't just a dog, she was the only living soul that warmed my heart in this cold world after I lost my mother. She was my reason to breathe. But that morning, everything turned into a nightmare. I was getting ready for work. Luna should have been sleeping soundly in her bed as usual, but when I looked at her bed, it was empty. I thought my heart stopped for a second. "Luna!" I screamed, searching the rooms. She wasn't there. I ran to the living room in a panic. My stepbrother Ryan was sprawled on the couch looking at his phone. Even though he's 31, Ryan is a parasite who still acts like a teenager, is irresponsible, and is constantly swimming in debt. "Ryan, where is Luna?" I screamed. He shrugged without even bothering to look at me. "I don't know," he said loosely. "The door might have been left open a bit this morning. She probably ran away. It's that street dog spirit." My blood boiled. The door was locked. I check that door twice every night. I immediately grabbed my phone to check the security camera in the hallway, but the screen was black. My eyes drifted to the plug on the wall. The camera had been unplugged. A cold feeling settled inside me. This wasn't an accident. Luna hadn't run away. I turned to Ryan. "Did you turn off the camera?" I asked with a trembling voice. He rolled his eyes. "Saving electricity, Defane. Think about the bills for once," he said brazenly. I couldn't go to work that day. I searched the streets for Luna for hours. I taped her photo to poles. When I returned home, my eyes were swollen from crying, but Ryan was enjoying a pizza. I went online in despair. While looking at lost pet ads, I saw that photo on a sales site. My stomach turned when I read the title, "Purebred Pomeranian, Urgent Sale, from Owner." The dog in the photo was Luna. Even that little pink heart on her collar was the same, but the person who posted the ad wasn't Ryan. It was a fake account named Ghost User. My hands trembling, I posed as a buyer. I sent a message, "I want to buy the dog immediately. I'll pay cash." The reply came in seconds. A meeting point was given. When I went there, I expected to see Ryan. I wanted to jump on him and tear him apart. But the person waiting in the park wasn't Ryan. It was a woman named Melissa, about 34 years old, extremely stylish and polite. In her arms was Luna. As soon as Luna saw me, she started barking and wagging her tail like crazy. Melissa looked at me in shock. "Is this dog yours?" she asked anxiously. "Yes," I said through tears. "That's my Luna. She was stolen." Melissa's face fell. She pulled a paper from her bag. "But the man who sold her to me. He told me the dog's owner moved abroad and didn't want the dog anymore. He even gave me this document for the ownership transfer." I took the paper and I felt like my world was collapsing. There was a forged signature under my name on the document. But worse, Ryan hadn't just sold Luna to Melissa. Melissa looked at me with pity and said, "The man told me something else." He explained that the dog's owner was mentally unstable, so the animal needed to be taken away. And he told me that if I paid extra for vet expenses, he could transfer the microchip to me immediately. At that moment, something inside me broke, and in its place settled anger, a cold rage, because Ryan hadn't just stolen Luna. He had also stolen my reputation and tried to make me look like a mental patient. Melissa was looking at me with wide eyes, her hands trembling as she held the fake documents, and I could see the guilt and fear mixing in her face because this kind woman had unknowingly become part of my stepbrother's disgusting crime. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down because I needed to think clearly now, not emotionally, and I needed to gather all the evidence to make sure Ryan would pay for what he had done. I pulled out my phone and showed Melissa hundreds of photos of Luna and me together. Photos from her puppy days, her first vet visit, her birthday parties, and most importantly, her microchip registration documents that were officially registered in my name with the date clearly showing I had owned her for 3 years. Melissa's face turned completely white as she scrolled through the photos, and tears started streaming down her cheeks as she realized she had been used as a pawn in Ryan's cruel game. "Oh my God," Melissa whispered, her voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I had no idea. That man seemed so genuine and concerned. He even cried when he told me about your supposed mental condition and said he was doing this to protect the dog from neglect." I felt my stomach turn hearing how far Ryan had gone with his lies, creating an entire fictional narrative to sell my beloved Luna, and I wondered how many times he had practiced that sob story before successfully conning Melissa. "How much did he charge you?" I asked, already dreading the answer. Melissa looked down at her feet, embarrassed. "He asked for $800 initially, but when I said that was too much for my budget, he agreed to $500 cash, and he said the remaining $300 could go toward the vet bills and microchip transfer that he claimed he would arrange." My heart sank because Ryan had sold Luna, my precious companion who had helped me survive my darkest days after my mother's death, for the price of his weekend drinking money, and he had even tried to squeeze more money out of an innocent person by lying about vet expenses. "Melissa, I need to ask you something very important," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Do you still have any messages or communications with the person who sold you Luna? And do you remember exactly where and when you met him?" Melissa immediately pulled out her phone and showed me the conversation thread, and my suspicions were confirmed when I saw the phone number belonged to a prepaid burner phone, something Ryan had obviously bought specifically for this transaction to avoid being traced. "We met at the parking lot of the Crossgates Mall 3 days ago," Melissa explained. "He was driving a blue Honda Civic and he seemed really rushed, like he wanted to finish the transaction quickly and leave, which I thought was odd at the time, but I dismissed it because I was so excited about getting Luna." I felt my detective instincts kicking in because I knew that parking lot had security cameras everywhere, and if we could get that footage, we would have solid proof of Ryan's crime on video. "Melissa, I know this is a lot to ask, but would you be willing to come with me to the police station and give a statement about everything that happened?" I asked, holding Luna close to my chest as she licked my face frantically, clearly confused about why she had been separated from me in the first place. Melissa didn't hesitate for even a second. "Absolutely," she said firmly. "What that man did is not just wrong, it's criminal, and I want to help you in any way I can to make sure he faces justice." We exchanged phone numbers and agreed to meet at the police station in 1 hour, which gave me just enough time to go home and confront Ryan face to face, because I wanted to see his reaction when I walked through that door with Luna in my arms. The drive home felt like the longest 15 minutes of my life, and my mind was racing with thoughts of what I would say to Ryan and how he would try to worm his way out of this situation like he always did whenever he got caught doing something wrong. When I pulled into the driveway, I saw Ryan's car was still there, which meant he was home, probably thinking he had gotten away with his crime and was already planning how to spend the $500 he had stolen from my life. I took a deep breath, held Luna tightly, and walked up to the front door, my hand shaking slightly as I turned the key in the lock. The moment I stepped inside, I heard Ryan's voice coming from the living room, and he was on the phone with someone, laughing loudly about something. "Yeah, man, easiest $500 I ever made," he was saying, completely oblivious to the fact that I was standing in the hallway listening to every word. "My sister was so dramatic about that stupid dog crying and making a scene. But whatever, she'll get over it, she always does." I felt my blood boiling as I listened to him mock my pain and dismiss Luna as if she were just some disposable object. And I knew in that moment that I wasn't just going to report him to the police, I was going to make absolutely sure he paid the maximum price for what he had done. I walked into the living room with Luna still in my arms, and the look on Ryan's face when he saw us was absolutely priceless. His mouth literally dropped open and the phone slipped from his hand and clattered onto the floor as all the color drained from his face. "What the hell?" he stammered, his eyes darting between me and Luna as if he were seeing a ghost. Where did you? I cut him off with a cold smile, the kind of smile that doesn't reach your eyes, the kind that says, "I know everything and you're finished." "Surprise, Ryan," I said calmly, walking closer to him as he backed away instinctively. "Did you really think you could sell my dog and get away with it? Did you really think I wouldn't find out?" Ryan's face went through several emotions in rapid succession: shock, fear, anger, and then that familiar defensive arrogance that he always used when he was caught doing something wrong. "Look, Daphne, it's not what you think," he started, raising his hands as if that would somehow make everything okay. "I was just borrowing her temporarily. I was going to buy her back." "Borrowing her temporarily?" I repeated, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "Is that what you call forging documents, unplugging security cameras, and telling the buyer that I'm mentally unstable and moved abroad? That's your definition of borrowing?" Ryan's face flushed red, and I could see the panic starting to set in as he realized I knew everything. Not just about the sale, but about all his elaborate lies and manipulations. "Who told you that?" he demanded, his voice rising. "Did that woman call you? She had no right to contact you. We had a deal." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was actually angry at Melissa for being honest, as if she were the one who had done something wrong in this situation. "She had every right, Ryan, because you sold her stolen property using forged documents, and in case you're too stupid to understand, that's not just morally wrong, it's multiple felonies." I pulled out my phone and started recording him because I wanted to capture every word of this conversation for the police. "Why don't you explain to me exactly why you needed $500 so badly that you were willing to steal the only thing in this world that matters to me?" Ryan's expression changed, and for a moment I thought I saw something like shame flicker across his face, but it was quickly replaced by that same defensive anger. "You want to know why? Fine. I'll tell you why. I owed money to some people, dangerous people, and they were threatening me, and I needed cash immediately or they were going to hurt me." He was practically shouting now, as if raising his voice would somehow justify his actions. "I was desperate, Daphne. What was I supposed to do?" I stared at him in disbelief because even now, even caught red-handed with all the evidence stacked against him, he was still trying to play the victim and make me feel sorry for him. "You could have asked me for help, Ryan. You could have gotten a job. You could have sold your gaming console or your expensive sneakers or any of the other luxury items you waste money on, but instead you chose to steal my dog and traumatize both of us." Luna was trembling in my arms, clearly sensing the tension in the room, and I gently stroked her fur to calm her down while keeping my eyes locked on Ryan. "I'm going to the police station right now," I said firmly, heading toward the door. "Melissa is meeting me there to give her statement, and we have all the evidence we need to press charges against you for theft, fraud, and forgery." Ryan's face went completely white, and he rushed toward me, grabbing my arm desperately. "Wait, please, you can't do this to me. I'm your brother." I yanked my arm away from him with such force that he stumbled backward. "You're not my brother, Ryan. You're my stepbrother, and after what you did, you're nothing to me anymore. My mother married your father when we were teenagers, and I tried to be a good sister to you for her sake, but she's gone now and I don't owe you anything, especially not after you betrayed me like this." The truth was that Ryan had always been a problem, even when our parents were alive, constantly getting into trouble, borrowing money he never paid back, and using his charm to manipulate everyone around him. But this time he had gone too far, and I was done making excuses for him. As I walked out the door with Luna, I could hear Ryan behind me, his voice cracking with desperation. "Daphne, please. If you report me, I'll go to jail. Is that what you want? Do you want to destroy my life over a dog?" I turned around one last time and looked him straight in the eyes. "You destroyed your own life, Ryan. I'm just making sure you face the consequences for once." The drive to the police station felt surreal, like I was watching myself from outside my body, going through the motions but not quite believing this was really happening. Melissa was already waiting in the parking lot when I arrived, and she gave me an encouraging smile as I got out of the car. "Are you okay?" she asked gently, and I nodded, even though I wasn't sure if that was true. "Let's just get this over with," I replied, and together we walked into the station. The officer at the front desk, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes named Officer Patricia Chen, listened carefully as I explained the situation, showing her the photos, the microchip documents, and Melissa's testimony about how Ryan had sold Luna using false pretenses. "This is definitely a case of theft and fraud," Officer Chen said seriously, typing notes into her computer. "We'll need to file a formal report and you'll need to give detailed statements, both of you." The process took almost 3 hours, going through every detail of what happened, providing all the evidence, and signing multiple forms, but I didn't care how long it took because I wanted to make sure everything was documented properly. Officer Chen told us that they would investigate immediately and would likely obtain the security footage from the Crossgates Mall parking lot to corroborate Melissa's account of the transaction. "Based on what you've told me and the evidence you've provided, we have strong grounds for multiple charges including grand larceny, forgery of documents, and fraud," she explained. "The district attorney will review the case and determine the exact charges, but I can tell you that this is serious and he will likely face significant legal consequences." As we left the police station, Melissa turned to me with tears in her eyes. "I'm so sorry I unknowingly participated in this. I feel terrible about what happened to you." I shook my head and gave her a hug. "You didn't do anything wrong, Melissa. You're a victim in this too. Ryan manipulated both of us." We exchanged promises to stay in touch, and she told me that if I ever needed anything, I shouldn't hesitate to call her. Driving home, I felt a strange mixture of emotions: relief that Luna was safe in my arms, anger at Ryan for what he had done, and anxiety about what would happen next. When I pulled into the driveway, Ryan's car was gone and I breathed a sigh of relief because I wasn't ready to face him again so soon. I unlocked the door cautiously, half expecting him to jump out from somewhere, but the house was completely empty and eerily quiet. I spent the rest of that evening cuddling with Luna on the couch, feeding her treats, and trying to reassure both of us that everything would be okay now. But I couldn't stop thinking about what Officer Chen had said about Ryan facing serious legal consequences, and part of me wondered if I had done the right thing by involving the police. That doubt lasted for exactly 5 minutes before I remembered his face when I walked in with Luna, the complete lack of remorse in his eyes, and his pathetic attempts to justify what he had done. No, I had absolutely made the right decision. Ryan needed to learn that actions have consequences, and that he couldn't just charm and manipulate his way out of everything forever. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning with anxiety about what would come next, and Luna seemed to sense my distress because she stayed pressed against me the entire night, her warm little body providing comfort in the darkness. The next morning, I woke up to someone pounding aggressively on my front door, and my heart immediately started racing because I knew it had to be Ryan. I grabbed my phone before opening the door, ready to call 911 if he tried anything threatening, but when I looked through the peephole, I saw it wasn't Ryan at all. It was his father, my stepfather, Robert Miller, and he looked absolutely furious. I took a deep breath and opened the door, keeping the chain lock engaged. "Daphne, we need to talk," Robert said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. "Ryan told me what you did, going to the police over a family matter. What were you thinking?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Ryan had clearly spun the story to make himself look like the victim and me look like the villain. "Did Ryan also tell you that he stole Luna, forged my signature on legal documents, and sold her to a stranger while claiming I was mentally unstable?" I asked coldly. Robert's expression faltered slightly, but he pressed on. "He made a mistake, yes, but family handles these things privately. You don't destroy your brother's future by getting him arrested." The word brother stung because Ryan and I had never truly been siblings. We had been two strangers forced to live together when our parents got married, and the only reason I had tolerated him for so long was out of respect for my late mother's memory. Robert, with all due respect, Ryan is 31 years old, and this isn't just a mistake. It's a pattern of behavior that has been going on for years. The gambling, the debts, the lying, the manipulation, and now he's crossed a line that I cannot and will not forgive. I could see Robert struggling with what to say next because deep down he knew I was right. He had been enabling Ryan's behavior for years, bailing him out of trouble, making excuses for him, and hoping that somehow Ryan would magically grow up and become responsible. "What do you want me to do, Daphne?" Robert asked, his voice softer now, almost pleading. "Do you want me to beg you to drop the charges? Because I will. I'll get down on my knees right now if that's what it takes to save my son from prison." I felt a wave of sadness wash over me because I had once cared about Robert. He had been kind to my mother during her final years, but his blind devotion to Ryan had poisoned our relationship. "I'm not dropping the charges, Robert. Luna isn't just a pet to me, she's family, and what Ryan did was unforgivable. If you want to help your son, encourage him to take responsibility for his actions, hire him a good lawyer, and let him face the consequences like an adult." Robert stared at me for a long moment, his jaw clenched, and then without another word, he turned and walked away, and I knew in that moment that our already fragile relationship was completely broken beyond repair. The following days were a blur of phone calls from the district attorney's office, follow-up meetings with Officer Chen, and constant text messages from unknown numbers that I suspected were Ryan trying to reach me from burner phones. The messages ranged from angry threats about how I would regret what I had done, to pathetic apologies and promises to change, to desperate pleas for me to drop the charges before it was too late. I blocked every single number and refused to engage because I knew Ryan well enough to know that any communication would just be another manipulation attempt. Then, exactly 1 week after I filed the police report, Officer Chen called me with news. "Daphne, I wanted to let you know that we've arrested Ryan Miller this morning. He's being charged with grand larceny in the 4th degree, criminal possession of a forged instrument, fraud, and identity theft." My hands were shaking as I held the phone because hearing those words made everything suddenly very real. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Officer Chen explained that Ryan would be arraigned, bail would be set, and then there would be a series of court proceedings leading up to either a plea deal or a trial. Given the evidence we have, including the security footage from the mall that clearly shows Ryan conducting the transaction with Melissa, and the forged documents with your signature, the district attorney is very confident about getting a conviction. She paused before adding, "I also need to tell you that when we searched Ryan's apartment, we found something else. Evidence that he's been involved in similar scams before, selling items that didn't belong to him using fake documentation. We're still investigating the full extent of his activities, but it appears Luna wasn't his first victim." That revelation hit me like a punch to the gut, because it meant Ryan was even worse than I had imagined. He wasn't just an irresponsible stepbrother who made a terrible mistake. He was a habitual criminal who had been operating under everyone's noses for who knows how long. Officer Chen continued, "We found records indicating he's defrauded at least 6 other people over the past 2 years, selling everything from electronics to jewelry to pet animals, always using fake identities and forged documents." I felt sick to my stomach thinking about all the other victims who had been scammed by Ryan, all the other families who had lost precious possessions or beloved pets because of his greed. "Will those other victims be contacted?" I asked. "Yes, we're reaching out to everyone we can identify, and they'll have the opportunity to press charges as well, which means Ryan is looking at significantly more serious legal consequences than just your case alone." After I hung up with Officer Chen, I sat in stunned silence trying to process everything I had just learned. Luna jumped onto my lap and looked up at me with those big, trusting eyes, completely unaware of the legal drama swirling around her, and I held her close, feeling grateful that I had found her in time before something worse could have happened. That night, I received a call from an unknown number and almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up, and I was shocked to hear Melissa's voice on the other end. "Daphne, I hope I'm not bothering you, but I just heard from the police about Ryan's arrest and about the other victims, and I wanted to check on you to see how you're holding up." Her kindness and concern touched me deeply because she had no obligation to stay involved in this situation. She could have just walked away after giving her statement, but instead, she was reaching out to offer support. "Thank you, Melissa. I'm okay. Just trying to process everything," I admitted. "It's been overwhelming learning that Ryan's been doing this to other people for years." Melissa was quiet for a moment before saying, "I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, and I realize now that there were so many red flags during my interaction with Ryan that I should have noticed. The rushed transaction, the sob story, the unwillingness to provide proper documentation. But I was so excited about getting a dog that I ignored my instincts." I assured her that she shouldn't blame herself because Ryan was a skilled manipulator who knew exactly how to exploit people's emotions and desires. We talked for over an hour, sharing our experiences and processing the trauma of being deceived by someone we had trusted or, in my case, been forced to live with. 3 months later, I found myself sitting in a courtroom, my hands clasped tightly in my lap, Luna safely at home with a pet sitter because I couldn't bring her to court. Ryan was sitting at the defendant's table with his lawyer, and he looked completely different from the cocky, arrogant person I had known all these years. His hair was unkempt, his expensive clothes replaced with a cheap suit, and his face was pale and gaunt as if he hadn't been sleeping or eating properly. The prosecutor, a sharp woman named Linda Martinez, stood up and began presenting the case, methodically laying out all the evidence against Ryan, the security footage, the forged documents, the testimony from Melissa and the 5 other victims who had come forward, and the digital trail of his burner phones and fake online accounts. I watched Ryan's face as each piece of evidence was presented, and I could see him sinking deeper into his chair, the reality of his situation finally penetrating through whatever fantasy world he had been living in, where actions didn't have consequences. When it was time for victim impact statements, I was the first to speak. I walked up to the podium, my prepared statement trembling in my hands, and I looked directly at Ryan as I began. "Your Honor, members of the court, when Ryan Miller stole my dog Luna, he didn't just take an animal from my home. He took my emotional support system, my companion who had helped me survive the darkest period of my life after losing my mother to cancer." I could feel my voice cracking, but I pushed through because I needed Ryan to hear this. I needed him to understand the magnitude of what he had done. Luna was there for me when I couldn't get out of bed, when the grief was so overwhelming I couldn't breathe, when I felt completely alone in this world. Ryan knew all of this. He saw my pain. He witnessed my struggle, and he still chose to steal her and sell her for $500, money that he used to pay off gambling debts from his own poor choices. I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word. But what hurt even more than the theft itself was discovering the lies he told about me, claiming I was mentally unstable, that I had abandoned Luna, that I was unfit to care for her. He tried to destroy my reputation to cover up his crime, and if I hadn't found Luna when I did, I don't know if I would have survived losing her permanently. I saw tears streaming down Melissa's face in the gallery, and several other victims were nodding in recognition, understanding exactly what I meant because Ryan had told similar lies about all of them. I'm here today not just to seek justice for myself and Luna, but for all the other people Ryan has hurt with his selfish, criminal behavior, and I'm asking the court to impose a sentence that reflects the serious nature of his crimes and ensures he cannot continue victimizing innocent people. When I finished and returned to my seat, Melissa went up next and gave her statement about how the experience had affected her trust in people and made her question her own judgment. Then, one by one, the other victims spoke, an elderly man whose late wife's jewelry Ryan had stolen and sold, a college student whose laptop Ryan had taken from a coffee shop and pawned, a young couple whose purebred cat Ryan had convinced them to temporarily foster before selling it online. The pattern was clear and devastating. Ryan had been running these scams systematically, targeting vulnerable people and showing absolutely no remorse until he got caught. When the victim statements concluded, the judge asked Ryan if he wanted to say anything before sentencing. Ryan's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, probably advising him to show contrition, and Ryan slowly stood up, his voice barely audible as he spoke. I'm sorry for what I did. I was desperate and made terrible choices, and I hope someday the people I hurt can forgive me. His apology felt hollow and scripted, lacking any genuine emotion or understanding of the pain he had caused, and I could see from the judge's expression that she wasn't impressed either. Judge Sarah Morrison looked over her reading glasses at Ryan with an expression of profound disappointment. Mr. Miller, I've been on this bench for 17 years, and I've seen countless defendants come through this courtroom, some who made genuine mistakes and showed real remorse, and others who simply got caught and said whatever they thought would reduce their sentence. She paused, letting her words sink in. You, Mr. Miller, fall firmly into the latter category. The evidence shows a pattern of calculated predatory behavior targeting vulnerable individuals, and your hollow apology today does nothing to demonstrate genuine rehabilitation or understanding of the harm you've caused. The judge continued, You didn't just steal property, you violated trust, you exploited emotional attachments, and you showed a callous disregard for the well-being of both people and animals. Your actions weren't born of desperation as you claim. They were born of selfishness and a fundamental lack of character. I held my breath as Judge Morrison announced the sentence. Ryan Miller, I hereby sentence you to 4 years in state prison on the combined charges of grand larceny, fraud, forgery, and identity theft, with credit for time served. Additionally, you are ordered to pay full restitution to all victims, including the estimated value of emotional distress damages as determined by the Victim Compensation Board. And upon release, you will serve 3 years of supervised probation, during which you will be prohibited from owning or handling any animals and must undergo mandatory counseling for gambling addiction and antisocial behavior. The courtroom erupted in whispers, and I felt tears streaming down my face. Not tears of sadness, but of relief and vindication, because justice had finally been served. Ryan's face had gone completely white, and he seemed to be in shock, unable to process what had just happened, and his lawyer was already whispering about appeals. But I knew that with the overwhelming evidence against him, any appeal would be futile. As the bailiffs led Ryan away in handcuffs, he turned one last time to look at me, and I met his gaze without flinching, without anger, without pity, just a calm acceptance that this chapter of my life was finally closing. Officer Chen approached me after the proceedings and gave me a genuine smile. Justice was served today, Daphne. You should be proud of yourself for standing up and fighting back. I thanked her for everything she had done to support me through this process. Outside the courthouse, I was surrounded by Melissa and the other victims, and we shared a group hug, a moment of collective relief and solidarity. We had all been hurt by the same person, but we had found strength in coming together and refusing to be silent. Melissa pulled me aside and said something that I will never forget. You know, when I first bought Luna from Ryan, I thought I was getting a dog, but what I actually got was something much more valuable. I got a friend and a reminder that there are still good people in this world who fight for what's right. We exchanged phone numbers and promised to stay in touch, and I meant it because Melissa had become an unexpected ally and friend through this whole ordeal. When I finally returned home that evening, Luna was waiting for me at the door, tail wagging frantically, completely unaware of the legal victory we had just won. I scooped her up and held her close, breathing in her familiar scent and feeling the weight of the past few months finally lifting from my shoulders. We did it, baby girl, I whispered into her soft fur. He can't hurt us anymore. That night, I posted a video on social media telling my story, not to shame Ryan publicly, but to encourage other victims of similar crimes to speak up and not let manipulators and thieves get away with their actions. The response was overwhelming, hundreds of messages from people sharing their own experiences, thanking me for being brave enough to pursue justice, and asking for advice on how to handle similar situations. Over the following months, something beautiful emerged from this traumatic experience. Melissa and I started volunteering together at a local animal shelter, using our story to educate people about the signs of pet scams and how to protect themselves when buying or adopting animals. We created a support group for victims of theft and fraud, providing emotional support and practical guidance for navigating the legal system. Luna became something of a mascot for our cause, attending events and bringing joy to everyone she met, completely unaware that she had sparked a movement for justice. I also reconnected with parts of myself that I had lost during the grief of losing my mother, finding purpose and strength in helping others and refusing to let Ryan's betrayal define me. The most unexpected miracle came exactly 1 year after Ryan's sentencing, when I received a call from the Victim Compensation Board informing me that Ryan's restitution payments had been processed, and I would be receiving not just compensation for Luna's value, but also a substantial amount for emotional distress damages. I decided to use that money to start a nonprofit organization dedicated to reuniting stolen pets with their owners and providing legal support for victims of animal theft. Luna sat beside me as I signed the incorporation papers, her little paw resting on my hand as if giving her approval, and I smiled knowing that something positive and lasting had come from our pain. Today, 2 years after that terrible morning when Luna disappeared, my life looks completely different. The house that Ryan and I once shared uncomfortably is now just mine, peaceful and filled with Luna's toys and photos of all the animals we've helped reunite with their families. Melissa remains one of my closest friends, and we laugh about how a traumatic experience brought us together in the most unexpected way. Ryan is still in prison, and while his father Robert has tried reaching out a few times, I've maintained my boundaries because some relationships are too toxic to repair. I don't hate Ryan anymore. That would give him too much power over my emotions. Instead, I simply acknowledge that he was a person who made terrible choices and is now facing the consequences, and I've moved forward with my life without him in it. Luna is curled up beside me as I finish telling this story, now a bit older and slightly grayer around the muzzle, but still the same loyal, loving companion who saved my life when I needed her most. People often ask me if I regret pressing charges, or if I wish I had handled things differently, and my answer is always the same. Absolutely not. Standing up for myself and for Luna was the best decision I ever made, not just because justice was served, but because it taught me that I am stronger than I ever imagined, that I deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, and that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is establish firm boundaries and let people face the natural consequences of their actions. So, to anyone watching this who has been betrayed by someone they trusted, who has had something precious stolen from them, who feels powerless against manipulation and cruelty, I want you to know that you are not alone, that justice is possible, and that fighting back is not about revenge. It's about reclaiming your power and protecting what matters most. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for supporting Luna and me through this journey, and remember to subscribe. Share your pet's name in the comments, and most importantly, never let anyone make you feel like standing up for yourself is wrong, because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply refuse to be a victim anymore.